speaker is my better half, by sure, but we have a daughter, Meredith. And Meredith works at Kennesaw State, and she has agreed to come up and introduce our speaker for tonight. Meredith.
Well, I was hoping to sneak in so no one knew who I was, but thanks, Dad. Well, welcome everyone. It's so wonderful to see your bright faces that are here just to celebrate Women's History Month along with our topic for tonight. But I've seen a lot of you before, whether I've grown up with you, whether you've taught me, whether you've sold a house to me, whether you're my best friend. But I want to know, how many of you came to the train wreck lecture not too long ago? Okay, yeah, okay. What about, show of hands, who attended any of the Saltpeter Cave hiking? Yes, all right. Speaking of hiking, Ladd's Mountain? Okay, active bunch. Yeah, fell in Saltpeter's. So raise your hand if you fell in Saltpeter's Cave. Okay, wonderful. Okay, what about the Metal Detecting Club? Who's a part? Okay, that's the elite group right there. Well, most of these events and their initiative can be tied to Joe Head, as you know, and he has obviously read my speech tonight. So I have the great honor to introduce our speaker, who is actually Joe Head's better looking half, if you would agree. Right, show of hands.
Intelligent half, too.
Intelligent. Well, National Women's History Month is an important topic, and Jessica Daves is interesting, exciting, and intimate to Bartow County. Debbie Head has done intense research on her, and each page she turned was like a vein of gold that led to a wealth of information, which she's excited to share with you tonight. Debbie attended Tift College, which was an all-female college in Middle Georgia. She received her Bachelor's of Arts in History, convenient, right, with a concentration in education. One of her first jobs after she graduated was actually working at a female college, Westland, you might have heard of it, also Middle Georgia. She received her bachelor's degree in higher education administration from Georgia Southern University. Debbie retired from Kennesaw State University as the director of institutional research, which is quite an achievement. She too was able to break barriers for women coming up to be directors and leaders at a male-dominated level. So with that, you're here tonight. So how many of you have been receiving communications such as emails or text messages from EVHS? Yes, okay. What about, for those who are high tech, social media posts? Anyone? Anyone taking the quizzes on Instagram? Well, Debbie is actually the mastermind behind that all. She's been putting together communication plans, creating awareness for the society, as well as why history is important, and has done a fantastic job keeping up with social media trends. Does anyone know what a reel is? Okay, one person. Yep, all right. She has actually also worked with the CRM and registration platform for all the events that we do, including this one. So if you did not show tonight, she knows. As many of you have pointed out, when Debbie walks up here, you may think that we look like twins. Well, that's because she's my mom. And what a joy it is to look like her, and how lucky I am to have a strong female role model to look up to. What a better way to talk about remarkable Jessica, who is a trailblazer, than my mother, who has helped pave the way for me and other women. Please welcome my mom, my friend, my role model, Debbie Head.
Okay, and now I've got to pull myself back together after that. Little did I know, when almost 45 years ago, when Joe and I married, that I would, one, live in Bartow County, and two, be up to here with Etowah Valley Historical Society. But and my rule used to be I didn't go to a society event unless there was food involved. So, but here we are, and here we go, and we're going deep on Jessica Daves. Okay, there it is. I have to say thank you. Yeah, that's great. As you know, if you've ever done a project, you don't do it in isolation. Sam Graham, who is not here, but he is our newspaper research person. He can find any article in ancient papers, and he did a lot of this research for us, and he found some obscure articles about our topic, Jessica Dave. So to him, I say thank you. Margaret Matheson is somewhere. She's in one of the pretty blue dresses. She's at one of our servers. Margaret is one of my dearest friends, and she listened to me as I started down this path of like, who is Jessica Daves? And why do we have one line on our website that just says, we had Jessica Daves from Bartow County, who was editor-in-chief of Vogue? And I said, excuse me? Let's go back and look at this again. So she and I, one of our favorite things, we'd get our cup of coffee from one of the stores downtown, and we walked Cherokee Avenue, which used to be Market Street. We walked Irwin. We walked Gilmer. We were trying to find out Jessica's home when she was a girl. I don't think we ever actually did it, but we had a lot of coffee and a lot of miles. Emily, I'm going to call her the secret sauce. We didn't know each other before Jessica, but now I think we're good friends, and she had lots of information to share. The family has done our display up front, so if you haven't seen it, you want to see it. It's really interesting, and I'm going to have the family share in just a little bit, so you will meet them. Lilia is a niece of Jessica, and she too is here, and she's the one that put me in touch with Emily, and we went running after that. And I cannot not thank Joe Head, the ultimate historian, as you know. So he encouraged, he was the biggest cheerleader, he constantly told me I could do this. There may have been some kicking and screaming along the way, but here we are. And then those of you who served, actually, okay, my good friends who dressed up, you were so good. Susan and Carolyn and Margaret, and who else is back there? Diane is over here, yes. I want y'all to stand up. They went outstanding with their she's doing the way. Mama.
To say that Dr. Barbara Aldridge cooked or prepared all of those dishes from Jessica Dave's
Cookbook. Thank you for that. Perpetual sponsor of EBHS. You're amazing, and we appreciate you. She is always there supporting us and cheering us on too as a society. So thank you once again. Okay, let's talk about Jessica. Jessica Hopkins Daves Parker. She was born Jessie, and there's a little story behind that you'll hear in a minute. She gave herself the name Annie, for her nieces and nephews to call her. So that's the way the family has referred to her. And you're going to be interested to see some of the letters that she wrote to the nieces and nephews, some of the gifts that she sent. So be sure and check all of that out. But we're going to look at Jessica as, was she the girl boss? Was she the boss lady? Was she the Wonder Woman in charge? I'm hoping she wasn't Devil Wears Prada. But there may have been some of that. There were a couple of stories that if she had on her sunglasses, you walked a wide path around her because she had a really bad headache. There are other ones that, like, if she walked in the ring, it became quiet. And everybody who was in there got busy doing whatever it is they do. But I shouldn't even back up on this. I did sort of allude to it. I got interested in her when there was so little said, and I was desperate for something to put on the email about Women's Month. Last year, this is in 21. So this is what started that whole process. We started digging. And what I'm going to just try to boil down to 3 points about her, and that is she's smart, very smart. She's driven, and she accomplished quite a lot. So I hope by the end of this you will agree with me that these are 3 really great characteristics to carry forward. But we're going to go back and meet the family. So, Isaac Stiles Hopkins was her grandfather. He was a Methodist minister. He was a doctor trained in Augusta. He was a professor at Emory, Oxford. He became president at Emory at Oxford. He introduced technology at the school. And then Georgia Tech stole him from Emory, and he was the founding president of Georgia Tech. So the family starts out on a really good path of education. Then her father comes along, Walter Weeks Daves, and I didn't go back and figure out why he came to Emory at Oxford, but he did, from Louisiana or Texas. He graduated with first honors. So remember that. You're going to hear it again. In 1887, after he graduated, he was recruited to Cartersville to be principal at the school in Cartersville. That's the start of being in Bartow County. In 1887, he also marries Annie. He leaves Cartersville for a short period of time, and then he is recruited back to be superintendent of the Cartersville City Schools. That's pretty significant. 15 years he did that. After that, he was postmaster of Cartersville, and we know that. Well, I'll show you why we know that. He also invented and has a patent for a latch of some. I tried to study the patent, but y'all can look at it if you want to. So he too, here comes another highly educated parent. And then Annie Hopkins Daves, Jessica's mother, graduated from Wesleyan. So think about the time period. You know, Civil War's ended, 1881. She goes to Wesleyan. Her mother had gone to Wesleyan, so Grandma had gone to Wesleyan and graduated. She married, like I said, Daves in 1887. They have 6 children. And then in 1930, she gets an honorary doctorate from the University of Georgia in pedagogy. Really? So yeah, the family is smart. Here's a quick look at the family of Walter Weeks and Annie Hopkins, and you'll see the second child, Emily Catherine Daves, is the family line who is here. And I just blew that off. Can y'all hear me? Okay. I just blew the wind thing off. Emily's family are the ones who are here. If y'all want to just wave your hands. There's somebody back here. Yeah. Great. Okay. I thought we had somebody back there. Okay.
Can't see Mama's name.
Now this would be,
Oh, excuse me.
that's your line. Yep. Okay, then Jessica has no children. Look down to Francis Marion. He was the youngest. He graduated from Georgia Tech, but probably the most interesting thing is that Francis Marion Daves built the 1953 Cartersville High School. How many went there? Yeah, and it's still there. It just has several other facades on top of it. We have very little information about Jessica as a young child. In fact, I didn't find any pictures. But the first thing we find is the high school graduation program. And Emily actually has a program up here framed. But we see that Emily and Jessica graduated together. And they were, Emily was just a little bit older. So here comes Jessica being a smart one, right? Not only that, she is first honors. Who was first honors? Her dad was first honors. So she comes along and is the valedictorian of her graduating class. There were only 11 in the graduating class. There were 9 women and 2 men. But at any rate, she was top of the class. And they show, let's see the next one. Here's an article out of the paper that shows that they had ongoing celebrations for graduation. They had it at the Sam Jones Tabernacle and also at the West School building. So the West School, okay, help me with this. Where we are? Is that right?
Down there.
Down that way, okay. No longer here.
The tabernacle was here.
The Tabernacle was here, okay, gotcha. Oops, I didn't say that, as you see. Jessica was quoted, if I had not been valedictorian, my parents simply would not have understood. I'm thinking the expectations in that family were pretty high. So after graduation in 1910, she leaves and goes to Agnes Scott. She gets a scholarship. And here in the newspaper, we know that because of the great newspaper articles we have. She was accompanied by her mother to go to Decatur. In some of the research, it'll say she graduated. We never found that documented. What we did find was that she was listed as a freshman in the Agnes Scott roster from 1910 and 11. And then, after that year, she begins her teaching career in Cartersville. She comes back and is employed as a teacher in the East School, grades 1 through 3 for that number of years. And the East School now is over, or was over, where Douglas and Carter Streets are. No, also not there anymore. She, there was one little interesting, kind of wonder what happened. She went to Hawkinsville for 1 year to teach in 1918. What else was going on in 1918? The pandemic. So the paper says that she came back like in October, and then she goes back to Hawkinsville and finishes out the school year. So we're just guessing, we're making an educated guess that it may have been due to the pandemic. Her last year of teaching was 1919 to 20. And then she makes the career shift. Oh, I always do that wrong. Before she makes that career shift, during her teaching career, this was kind of interesting. She went to normal school. You know what a normal school is? Teaching teachers how to teach better. And so here goes Bartow County and Cartersville having normal schools out in New Harley. And so she went to one of those and then also to one in Knoxville. The one in New Harley was kind of interesting. The school, the New Harley Institute, is no longer there. It was a beautiful building, but she would take the train from Cartersville to the Stylesboro Depot, and then the New Harley staff met them, took them to the dorm. Lovely dorm. Now this is in 1913. It's hot, it's June. I'm not gonna even ask about what facilities they had. They paid 40 cents a day, and they had to bring their own sheets. And then the faculty came from the University of Georgia, and they had classes for, this one was probably a week. I think the Knoxville normal school was 6 weeks. This is just a quick documentation of that she was reappointed as teacher, first, second, third grades, all these years. And then just to get the background, we've already said pandemic. Also, World War I was going on as she's starting her career, the Spanish flu, then comes the Great Depression, then comes World War II, and then the turbulent 50s and 60s. So it was not a very calm time when our young Jessica was making her move. But did I say she was driven? Mm-hmm. I think so. So she then turns and goes a totally different route. She goes to Detroit to stay with her Uncle Joel. And Uncle Joel, there's a class, she takes an advertising class and learns a little bit about copy. Apparently she's already a good writer. I'm thinking she's a good writer, maybe even an artist from some other things I read. So she then comes home from that, and there's a reference that she used the skills she learned in Detroit advertising to write ads for the book sale for the schools, and they did really well. So apparently she was pretty good. We would call that marketing now. We would call that as social media marketing or something, but she was doing it in the newspapers. So she comes home, but in February of 21, she didn't want to stay in Cartersville apparently. She goes to New York and stays with her Aunt Jessie Hopkins, who is a librarian and is living there. She takes another advertising class. This one is a little bit longer, but right away she gets a job in April. So that's pretty, I mean, you know, we have a lot of college graduates that are still looking for jobs, right? So she gets a job, and our newspaper is following her. There are so many articles about her career moves from here and there. This one, as you can see, says, this is the one about where she wrote most of the copy used by the Ladies Auxiliary for the school board's campaign to put over the list of books. So they were touting her skills as an advertising writer. So she gets a job with Best and Company, which is an upscale children's store, and she is writing copy. which is going, you know, I guess they're not maybe on the radio, maybe just on newspaper copy. April to December, she gets a promotion. Have y'all had a promotion that fast? I was pretty impressed. And then our paper says that in the New York Times, one of her advertisements took 6 columns and cost no less than $1,000, and that she had written not only the copy but had penned the lettering. So they were very impressed with her. She is still working with the Best & Company. Then this is, you know, if you're a little geeky historian, then you're pretty excited about this part. So we find in the paper that she goes to Paris on a business trip, and in 1923. So, you know, I was like, what do you go to Paris on? How do you get there? Well, does that look like a luxury liner? I guess it was in the day. But that was the Savoy. That's the one that she went across the ocean. That was her very first trip. And we know that because we found her passport. So we were excited. It's got her handwriting on it. One of the earliest pictures of her. And at this age, she's 28, I think, somewhere in there. She writes her address. She's in New York, Madison Circle. That sounds pretty impressive. Madison Avenue. She's sailing on the Savoy. She is still Jessie in 1923. So she has not changed her name yet to Jessica. Also on here, we learn her dad has to sign. She says she's single. She's never had a passport before. She's never been out of the country. Her dad signs, oh, I didn't use the pointer. Maybe you can see over here that he lives on at 406 North Irwin Street. So you're like, ooh, that's a clue. In 1923. Well, she was gone. Oh, well, I guess I don't need it now. What else from this did we learn? And this is where we learned the name of the ship and that she was going on business over there. So she's in New York, she's working at Best, she moves from Best to another company. She ends up at Saks Fifth Avenue working in their advertising. And she is invited, she's getting noticed for her ability to write. So she is invited by Edna Woolman Chase, who is the current editor at the time of Vogue magazine, to come to this tea. This was big name people. Eleanor Roosevelt, Elizabeth Arden, Helena Rubinstein, many others I didn't even list.
Edith Head, I think.
Edith Head, yeah. This group evolves into the International Fashion Group, which becomes a pretty powerful recommending group for fashion shows internationally, and fashion design and what they're going to publish. Let's see what else. Oh, she also, in 1930, she marries. She's 36 years old. She meets Robert Allerton Parker. Now, once again, here we are, these highly educated. They live at 1040 Park Avenue. He's an author of 3 books. He was secretary of the Pulitzer Prize Board. Really? Okay. He's from California. He was also a literary critic in the New York papers for plays and articles or books. So here they are. So this is, and like I said, there's so few pictures. I tried to put every single picture I found of her in here. So this is one, I had no idea the year of this one. 1933, she starts working at Vogue. 3 years later, she's promoted to managing editor. Let me go back. When she came to Vogue, they said, you can come work for us in the footwear department. So she was writing copy for shoes. And in 3 years, she's promoted to managing editor. 46, promoted to editor, and she becomes on the board of directors of Condé Nast, which is your publications board. They have several magazines. 52 is when she makes the big move and is promoted to editor-in-chief. So she has a long career at Vogue, and I really shortened it here. We're going to go back and look at some of the details behind this. In 1943, Emily, I don't know if y'all had seen this picture.
No.
I tried to have some surprises for the family. I wanted to find some pictures that maybe they had not seen. This one was in the Wesleyan Alumni magazine. She was the commencement speaker in 43. What's going on in 43? World War II. She's down in Wesleyan giving this speech, encouraging these young women graduates to give back to America, to ask for better health care and nutrition, to protect the environment, and to improve infrastructure. Are we still hearing the same? She was saying this in 43. She also took part of her speech and published it in the Vogue magazine. So there's an article called File for the Future for the young women to recognize. So in 1945, she and her siblings dedicate or purchase a stained glass window for Sam Jones Church, which is where they've gone. Who's seen it in the sanctuary? Okay, you gotta go find it. It's beautiful. They paid $100 each, I think, and put the window in the church. So they are a longtime Sam Jones family and are still Sam Jones family. In 1951 is her first encounter with Jackie Bouvier. Jackie wins the Prix de Paris writing event at age 22. And the award for that is that you get to do 6 months internship in New York with Vogue and 6 months in Paris. So she came into Vogue. Jackie was 22, looking for the appropriate husband, and Vogue was full of women. Kind of like us right here. Okay. So she said, thank you, but I think I'll move on. So she left. Her sister Lee, however, is in lots of Vogue photos and has a long-time relationship with the magazine. Here are a couple of pictures of Jessica. Edna Woolman Chase was the editor. I'm going to venture a guess that Edna was her mentor. She's the one who brought her along, saw her ability, and then when she retired, she's like, okay, Jessica is going to be our editor. And both of these pictures are in the 50s. The second one is when she's in Paris at a fashion show, and Andrew Lieberman is one of the Vogue photographers. And do you notice her look? Oh, I didn't tell y'all. Did you notice her look? Okay. This is what I was trying to channel her. So a little bit of black, lots of pearls, lots of bracelets, and the ear bobs. So, and I, as I read, she probably was not the fashionista that I named her, but she was smart and driven and accomplished. So, and she looks great to me. I would say she was very elegant. She has friends in high places. She, Coco Chanel even said, I put off my vacation so I could have lunch with her because it was her only free day. So Jessica has lots of admiration for her abilities as editor. Another place, I don't even have it in here, but Vogue was the top earning magazine. Harper's Bazaar was second, but Vogue outdistanced everybody during the Depression, during the war, into the 50s. She was also friends with Christian Dior and Yves Saint Laurent. They were having lunch in one place. This picture on the far side is when the International Fashion Group is having their monthly. And you can pick Jessica out maybe with the white hat. I can't do this, can I?
Yes, you can.
There it is. So, I don't even know what time it is. How I'm
You're
doing.
good.
Okay, contributions to the business. She was all about women being women of the world. That you were not just interested in fashion, but you needed to know about what's going on in the world. You need to expand. We have menus, we have home decorating, we brought in men's wear, we brought in patterns. She brought in ready to wear. That's her book. She has ready to wear. She was focusing on women who were one of the designers, but also most of the women who purchased the clothing, they could not afford a designer. So she also created what's called a buyer's guide. So her readers could say, oh, I can go to this store and get, I guess we'd call it a knockoff, but she would go and get that outfit. Well, Fifth Avenue loved her. She's sending all these women to their stores. I would say that was pretty smart. She also reached out and introduced new photographers and artists and helped them succeed, and writers, and launch their careers. She would reach out and let them have a chance, and she would mentor them. Now, if they didn't make it, she had given them a chance. I found this photo. They're in a editorial meeting, putting the final touches on I don't know if y'all seen this picture. I'm not gonna do the video, but this is from a very short clip on YouTube, and I can run it when we're finished. She is at a fashion show in London, so she's in here for 2 shots. It's kind of fun to watch, but we'll skip it for now. 59, she was named a French Legion of Honor. That sounds pretty significant. For her, enlightened efforts in advancing the corporation. She was also given the Italian Order of Merit. So from Cartersville, Georgia to New York, she's internationally known. 1960, the only woman named to the Decisive Dozen by Esquire magazine. I loved this. Miss Davis was one of the nation's tastemakers, the people who decree what the rest of us are going to wear, read, watch, and vote for. Today we would call those social media influencers, I think. Is that right, Mary? They were pretty significant in their own world. Okay, then I started diving deep on the Kennedy archives. Because in 1960, who was our president-elect? John F. Kennedy. So there are some letters in here. Now, Jessica goes back to 1951 of knowing Jackie. And she is writing to Jackie saying, we would like to have your pieces of your Prix de Paris document. We want to print that, but we'll only print what you want us to print. We'll print it when you want us to print it. Also, we would like to take photos. I'm not sure she ever got the photos worked out, but there's a letter to Jackie. There's a letter to Jackie's personal secretary saying they were friends. Hey, will you help me get this done? So this is all from Jessica, and you can see she has signed one of these documents. Then she writes Pierre Salinger. Some of us remember his name. And she's still trying to get the photo shoot worked out. They had scheduled it in October before the election, but then after the election, I'm imagining Jackie got terribly committed, so did not get around to that. They did, however, get John F. Kennedy. They photographed him on January 1st, 1960, and he does appear in Dave's Vogue. And this is where I'm saying, she wants to focus on the woman who lives in the world you need to know. Now, Jackie turned out to be one of our true fashion leaders. So here's where I want you to meet Jessica's family who was here. I had them wave, but I'm going to let Emily start out, introduce the family. I did forget Alice's fur coat. We have some of Jessica's pieces here. I think this is kind of fun. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
I'm Emily Ferguson Burgess, and my mother, Mary Pittman Ferguson, was Jessica Dave's niece. Now, my mother was born in 1926 here in Cartersville. Her parents were Emily and Claude Pittman. And so when mother was born, my grandmother, and grandfather, named her Mary Jessica. Well, that was in 26. Well, it was soon after that when my aunt, now Jessica Daves, changed her name or called herself Jessica Daves rather than Jessie Daves. Now, she was named after another aunt who was Jessie Hopkins. You will find that in this family we've got lots of Emilys and lots of Jessicas, or Jessies, mostly Jessicas. I didn't see her often when I was growing up. I lived in Southwest Georgia in a little small town because when Mother and Daddy married here in 1947, he was a farmer in South Georgia. But through the years, we kept in touch with Annie, or Annie kept in touch with us. And I've got, a few little memories that I'd like to share with y'all. She loved to send gifts. So, out of the blue, very often, 7 or 8 times a year, we'd get something. Well, the first one I really remember is in 1959 when I got my Barbie doll, one of the originals. Then, a few months later, in 1960, I got an original Chatty Cathy. I still have both of them, but I think probably an advertiser said, hey, here's some dolls. Would you like to give them to any of your relatives? So we got those. But then one year she sent a box about this tall, and it was just full of fabric, pink and red and white, all pretty kind of colors and stuff. Lots and lots of bedding. Well, my mother was very frugal. We lived on a farm. My daddy was a farmer. So all this fabric was wonderful. So she took it all and made bedding, window treatments, and all that sort of thing from my bedroom in the new house we were building. But like I said, she liked to send presents. So we never knew what was coming next. One of the things, we got this giant box one day, and we kept going through all the packaging and packaging. It was in a real tall box like this, silver from one of the jewelry stores. I know it wasn't Tiffany, but it might have been Cartier, whatever. Bear in mind, I'm living in southwest Georgia, small town. So we got down to the end, and there's a little note that says, bowl with carrots. Here it is. It's an Italian hand-painted bowl, and it's got carrots. Well, this was a funny thing that we talked about all of our lives. My family, it was just a joke about Mama getting the present with a bowl with carrots. Well, then a few years later, or maybe a few months, we got this other giant box. It didn't have a sign in it, but we kept going. Bear in mind, we live in southwest Georgia on a farm. Well, it was a set of 12 hand-painted Italian dinner plates. I'm going to put it like this before I break it. This is not exactly the style plates that we had at our house down in South Georgia. But I'm just trying to, get the point across. She was a generous, sweet lady. She loved my mama. She loved all of her family. But she just liked to send presents. Here's a pair of gloves. Every time I turned around, I was getting gloves. I love gloves, but I did wear these to prom. That's why they're so dirty, but that's been 2 or 3 years ago. But she was just very generous. But let me tell y'all about the trips when I visited her. The first time I visited was in 1964. My family drove up from Dawson, Georgia, all the way to New York. We had to spend the night a couple of times on the way with friends, of course. You're not going to stay in a motel. Anyway, so we got to Annie's house in New York City in 1964. So we were all staying at her apartment on Park Avenue, but she was going to go to the country. Well, I didn't know anything about New York. I didn't know about the country. I later found out that was the Hamptons. So she was going to the country. So anyway, we stayed there, but it's just as we walked in the door, there's art out the wazoo in this place. Stuff like, I learned later, Picasso's, just you name it, it was there. Anybody that was in vogue at that point in time. Well, there was one beautiful painting there. It was big, and it had a gilt frame with all this filigree on it, but there was this piece missing. Now, my daddy's from South Georgia, and he is a fix-it person. You got to do it yourself. And he said, Annie, what happened? Where do you have the piece that fell off of this? And she said, well, yes. He said, but I can't find anybody who will fix it for me. Daddy said, where's the hardware store? She said, well, it's just right down the street. He said, fine, I'll be back in a minute. So he went down, got some epoxy, came back, he glued it together. Well, she thought that he was the grandest thing that had ever lived. So she said, Helena Rubinstein gave me that painting, and I want you to have it. So when I die, that is going to be yours. Well, no, it wasn't. So then that was in 64. So then in 65, I went back and visited. I have to get these timelines straight because I know I went in 64 to the World's Fair. But anyway, in '65, I went back. That was probably my first plane flight. So I got to the airport, but in the meantime, Annie had told Mama, now look, I'm gonna send a car for her. And Mama said, oh, okay, fine, I'll tell her you're sending a car for her. Well, y'all, in Southwest Georgia, the cars are Ford and Chevrolet. One family had a Cadillac, but that was only one family in the whole town, the whole county. Anyway, so she's sending a car. So there's a gentleman standing there with my name, and I go out and I say, hey, I'm Emily Ferguson. And he says, oh, great, come with me, we're going to see Miss Parker, because she, except at work, she went by Miss Parker. So, anyway, we go on to the apartment and everything. So the doorman walks out, as he should, opens the door and says, are you here, good afternoon, ma'am, but are you, or miss, he didn't say ma'am, he said miss, are you here to see the Roosevelts? And I'm thinking, Roosevelts, that must be the same thing as Roosevelts in South Georgia. Well, I said, no, sir, I'm here to see Mrs. Parker. He said, oh, certainly, we're expecting you, welcome. I'm thinking, I sure am glad you're expecting me, because I am here in New York City and I don't know how to get back, but anyway. So, I visited with Annie and Uncle Rob for, a whole long weekend. And we just had a great time, and then I went back another time. A year or so later, I think I was on my way back from West Point, June week or something. But anyway, so that we went to the Cosmo Club and a couple of other her clubs. That was the first time that I officially had a silver dessert fork in front of my plate. Now at home we used silver. Mama didn't have stainless, but we didn't have formal desserts. If you wanted dessert, you just sort of ate it, whatever, but we didn't have forks at the top. But I had sense enough to know, okay, do not touch it until you see what she does. So I did. But anyway, we had lots of fun visits, or I did, and lots of communication with her. I hope if you'll have time at the end to come up and look at some of the things that I brought from home. Some were mine and some were Mother's, little notes that she sent through the years for Christmas presents or birthday presents or whatever. But I want to recognize some of the other family that's here, because some of y'all, you'll know some of them. Now my aunt, Leah Pittman Crow Johnson, is her niece. That's why she's my aunt, because she's my mama's sister. So she is here. She's the matriarch of the family. Then we also have my first cousin, who is a great niece as well. That's Rebecca Pittman Richards and her husband Mike, and they came in from Austin, Texas. So Becky, people get confused because my mama and Leah had another sister, Emily Hatfield, and then the brother is Walter Pittman, Walter Davis Pittman. But as soon as he went to college and that sort of thing, he joined aeronautical engineering. He worked on a couple of astronauts through the years, Apollo and Gemini and that sort of thing. But anyway, so there's really 4 of those siblings that were all the nieces and nephews of Jessica Davis. So anyway, they're all here tonight, and our other first cousin that lives here in town, well, we've got several, but my generation, we've got several others that live here, but Kathy White could not be here tonight. She was out of town, but we got Chuck and got Robert and Leanne and got lots of others. Well, those are only immediate when I said that, the first cousins or the nieces and the great nieces and nephews. So anyway, I might have left something out, but I can answer at the end when we get through. You want to say anything?
What?
Do you want to say anything?
Well, I can tell you about my trips. They were a little different from hers. Annie liked to give you gifts. And I went up there and she gave me this beautiful jacket.
So Alice can
Alice
stand.
modeled the jacket. I gave it to Alice. She looks better on her. So when I flew back to Cartersville, Harold, my husband, got my children out of the backyard where they were playing in mud and brought them to the airport. And that's how they met me. And And I came off the plane and I was wearing the fur. I wasn't about to ship it because I didn't trust them. So I was gonna wear it, make sure it got there safely. And I came off and Leanne, my daughter, saw me and she said, "Oh, Mama." And I said, "Don't touch the fur, Leanne." And Harold started laughing at me. He said, "Man," but that was one of Annie's gifts that I got.
Who gave the coat to Annie?
A furrier made it just for her that she knew. He picked out the.
I thought Coco Chanel gave it to her.
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe you heard a
It's a
story. I
good
didn't.
story. I like Coco Yeah.
She was a character, I'll tell you. She was impressed by anything. One Christmas, Betty Hodge, if y'all remember her, and I made angels. And they were pretty. I still got mine. And I made a beautiful one with lace and everything. I sent it to Annie. Oh my God, you'd have thought that I was a talented person. Oh, you should do this. You should sell them. Oh, it was gorgeous. I'm going to put it now. And then when Uncle Rob died, she wanted us to bury him. And me and them land, we didn't know, he was cremated. Nobody cremated anybody in those days, and we thought, how are we gonna do this? Well, she wanted to have it at the Episcopal Church. Well, Episcopal Church was a little strict in those days, and that wouldn't work. So we got her to have it at the Sam Jones, that little bitty, what you call it? Chapel. That's where they had it, but Emily and I put on this funeral for Uncle Rob. She flew down here with Uncle Rob in her lap in a little leather suitcase. And we had to call Atlanta to find something to put him in. They didn't know what we were talking about here in Carson. But we got an urn and everything, and we buried him. And then we went to my house. I don't know how, Emily didn't like to cook. So I had to fix the lunch. So we had a lovely luncheon. And she's sitting there, and she's got I saw it in one of the pictures, she's got a big old aquamarine on her finger that is that big. And here she goes, pulling it off. And she said, now, she's reaching toward me, and she said, I'm not gonna give it to you now, you'll get it when I die. And I'm like, Emily, we didn't. When she died, her dear sweet brother managed to get it off. I don't know how, but she had a diamond pin that the magazine gave her that would have given us all some pretty rings if we could have gotten our hands on it. But we didn't, but we loved her anyway, so.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. Those are great stories. Well, we're almost to the end. 1962 is the year that Jessica retires. Now, here's the story about her retiring. I don't think she was really ready, but there was a new associate editor, Diane Vreeland, and just as Marilyn Monroe had passed away, right before that, they had a photo shoot of her. Well, in Jessica's mind, it was not ethically and appropriate to run those pictures. Diana thought, oh my goodness, this is going to be a splash. So they ran, and Jessica resigned. She could not live with the new road that Vogue was going down. So this is when she resigned as editor. So that was the end of her official career. But that was not the end of her career. Her husband said, well, first thing we're going to do is vacation in south of France, or maybe it's Venice, whatever the weather is, we're going there. So then Jessica writes 3 books. She co-edits a couple of books, and we have them, one of them signed, at least one of them, maybe more, 2 of them, to the family who are up here. The World of Vogue, and then the Vogue Book of Menus and Recipes. As we said, some of those were what we had tonight. And then she also wrote, just singly, The Ready-Made Miracle. I said earlier, she was all about ready-made for all of us to go to the store. That was before TJ Maxx, right? Here we go. And then she and another lady had an article that they published weekly in a Chicago newspaper called The Sophisticated Slant. So she was not just sitting around, she was very busy. And one of the places said she wrote all night so she could have the copy ready for the secretary the next morning. She was an advisor to Vogue, continuing for several years. She was an employee of Condé Nast Publications, which is why the books were published. Her husband dies. We just heard that story about him getting to Cartersville. And then in 1974, she passes away at her Park Avenue home. would say she was a strong-willed woman, thoughtfulness and kindness, based on the things I read. Her marker, she's buried in Oak Hill Cemetery. Did you go find it, Emily? I forgot
I
it.
didn't.
Okay,
Thank you, Did.
it's in, there's an article on the Etowah Valley Historical Site that documents where the marker is. I don't recall the location. Through a uniquely turbulent time, she led the magazine with drive, confidence, and a commitment to honoring both history and ushering it into a new era. So to Jessica, we say thank you and we are proud of her.